All right, we'll go ahead and get started. If you want to raise your hand, Alec White, I see your hand up first, so we'll go ahead and start with the first question.
Coach, we obviously had some snow yesterday in Tucson. So just growing up in Pittsburgh, were you a fan of the snow? Did you like it? Do you have any interesting snow stories from your time growing up in Pittsburgh?
I'm sorry, Jason. I just caught the end of the question.
Oh, can you hear me now, Coach?
Yeah, there you go.
Uh, we had some snow yesterday, and you're from the Pittsburgh area, where I'm sure you had your fair of snowstorms. So, did you like snow growing up in that area? And is it nice to be in Tucson where you don't have that as much?
Yeah, for sure. And just so you know, like, don't ever call yesterday a snowstorm or anything related to snow. It'd be like that one doesn't count, you know. But clearly, living here in the winter months, it's I don't know if there can be a bigger change or discrepancy between 3 or 4 months of weather in the world than living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania versus Tucson, Arizona. I mean, it's I think snow is part one, and I think that's what people out west would ask about. But I think that if you really live there, what drives people crazy is just the grayness of the sky. You just don't see that blue sky or sun for it feels like months, but certainly weeks at a time. So I think you really appreciate it if you've had a chance to live in both places when you see that sun come up every day here.
And then just switching over to basketball this week, is there an update on Ben's status and how is he feeling? Have you had a chance to just talk to him about where he's at?
Yeah, Ben's update is simply that he's making progress. Like I mentioned after the game, we got him x-rayed and the x-rays were negative. And then you start to really look at the severity of the ankle injury. And, I think it's more grade 1 than a high ankle sprain or grade 2 or grade 3, which that's the second bit of good news. The hardest part is it's a quick turnaround. It happened in a game on Monday night. And now here we are preparing for a game on Thursday night and Saturday afternoon. So in fairness to whoever would get that injury, it's very difficult. And, this is the first time that Ben's experienced this. So, I think at first it just kind of scares you. You don't really know where you're going to go from here. But I believe that every day that goes by moving forward, which includes from today to tomorrow, he's going to make significant progress just because, it's a soft tissue injury and it's not as significant as it could have been. But I don't have the yes or no answer on whether he'll play. And then, if he plays, what role he'll have or how effective he'll be. We're just right now letting him rest, rehab, and just, really allowing him to kind of watch our game plan and be a part of everything we're doing to prepare for the game. But he himself right now makes no sense to put him out there and make him go.
David
leading
Kelly,
to the
you're up.
game. Leading to the game.
David Kelly, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. After the game, you were, a little bit upset just about the amount of players that you have left in terms of the guards. So how do you compensate for that moving forward if you don't have Ben? What do you do in that situation to try to make it work?
I mean, we're going to do the best that we can. That's what everybody is doing this season. Sometimes it's COVID, sometimes it's injuries and illness, and then there have been teams that have been decimated where they've had to deal with both injuries and COVID protocol and shutdowns, et cetera. Stanford's one of those teams. I don't think we've faced a team this season that's had more adversity, injuries, illness, different things that make a season more difficult than Stanford has. And I really credit Jared Haas and his staff. They've done an exceptional job, as has his players, especially those that have been there every game. I think Oscar Da Silva is one of those players. And, they found the way. They beat UCLA at home in their last game, and they played without, in essence, 3 starters, which is quite a feat. And it says a lot about Stanford's quality of depth. But it's I think it's what we all have to do. We're in that situation right now, losing Jamal Baker for a season-ending injury, and if Ben's not able to play, knowing that Kirk Kriisa is not able to play either for a different reason, you only have so much depth and so many guards. So Tibet is going to get called upon. Matt Wayan, one of our walk-ons, could get called upon. And then we're just going to ask Dalen Terry and Terrell Brown and James Akinjo to do more and push through. We have one player, Azulis, who I think in a pinch could slide over and maybe play the small forward for a brief period of time. But all of that isn't something that's going to make us the best we can be. It's just a holding pattern, and that would be the best that we can do in tomorrow night's game based on everything that we're going through right now.
Bruce Pascoe, you're up.
Sean, sorry, my video is not working for some reason, but I was wondering, with Ben, do you actually have Ben back in practice? I don't know, I guess you maybe took yes, but I was just curious if he's been able to do anything that you've seen so far, and also with mentioned Kerr might be cleared to practice more or contact today or yesterday. I was wondering if you could update those two things.
Yeah, Kerr is able to practice. He's fully cleared. And Ben, just from a precautionary perspective, he'll be at every meeting and practice, but he's not going to practice right now. It's just on a quick turnaround. It just does not make sense. We're trying to improve him and make him better, and that wouldn't be in his best interest going today.
If he is able to go tomorrow, would you still start him then, or would you start Dalen and just kind of see how it goes with Ben?
I would say we would probably start somebody else, Dalen. But, again, things can transpire differently from one day to the next with an injury. We'll know more. We know more today than maybe we did yesterday, but I don't have the answers to those things right now.
Okay. One thing on Kerr, I wanted to clear up. You'd mentioned that he was going to be able to play eligible at Utah and Colorado. Do you guys know for sure Utah game? Because there was some discrepancy depending on how they define things yesterday. I mean, do you know for sure?
I'm just going on what I've been told, and we're planning on playing him at Utah.
All right, thanks.
Justin Spears.
Coach, you said Azulis could possibly slide over to the small forward spot. What has he shown in practice and games that allows him to be versatile enough to make that switch?
Well, number one, he's able to shoot the basketball, as you guys know, whether it be a 3-point shot or 17-foot shot. So that's number one. And, physically, Azulis has the quickness and the size, obviously, but the quickness, and I think, the ability to move well enough that he could play that, not for 40 minutes, but, in a pinch or a window or a certain segment of the game. But, again, the problem with injuries is, it depends on when the injury happens, how much time that we have to prepare. I mentioned it last night when Jamal Baker got hurt in the UCLA game. He played some time after the injury, but, we had to move people and do the best that we could because it happened in a game. In this case, it happened in a game, but we have a pretty quick turnaround going from a Monday game to a Thursday game. If this happened on Saturday, that's 2 more days, for Ben to recover, but it also would give us 2 more days to maybe shuffle the deck and put our best foot forward or move different guys around so we could be more successful. So again, we're going to do the best that we can with the circumstances that have been given to us.
And obviously personnel is down, but what's different about your team since the last time you guys played against Stanford?
I mean, if we were healthy, I would say that in a very confident way that, we've grown since that first game. We're better. I'm sure Stanford feels the same way about their team, but we've gotten better on offense for sure, but also on defense. I think our younger players, that was our first road game, our first Pac-12 game. And I think if I'm not mistaken, it might've been only the 6th game of the year. So, you look at that game for what it was, and, Ben, Azuolas, and Dalen, you can only be so ready when that's the first of everything. So all those guys in particular, the younger guys on our team are better, more sure of themselves. That answer doesn't mean as much because, I don't know what Ben's status is. So, but, just addressing the game itself, Stanford is a great defensive team. They were a year ago as well. A year ago, they were one of college basketball's best defensive teams. They are again this year. They play hard with great effort. They play smart. They're together. They help each other. They take a lot of pride in that side of the ball, and you really feel that. On offense, they play well together. They have experience and talent. Zaire Williams is obviously a terrific freshman, but outside of him, a remainder of their roster is a talented group of guys that have been together, been through multiple Pac-12 seasons, and they're led by Oscar Da Silva, who I think is one of the best overall players who plays in college basketball. I mean, what he does for their team on offense, defense, the leadership, the intangibles, you could tell he's their heart and soul. And I think he's the overall best player in the Pac-12. And there's quite a few good ones in our conference this year, but I think he means the most to his team. So, we have our hands full, and we're going to have to play one heck of a game to beat them, especially under our circumstances.
Thank
Alec White, go ahead.
Yeah, coach. So the women's team had a couple cancellations this week and over the weekend, and I know they're not on pause, but are you guys from the men's perspective side of things doing anything different or different precautions to make sure you don't run into any issues?
No, I mean, we have our COVID protocol and our team rules that really we've had in place since we've gotten together in mid-August. And, our guys have done a tremendous job following those rules and protocols. And we get tested every morning, and we go about it, really the same day, same week. We just repeat. And, so far, we've made it almost to the end of January. So hopefully we have another 6 weeks left in us.
And then is there one thing you want to try to do differently against Stanford than you guys did in that first game? Is there an adjustment you'd like to make?
I think overall we have to be just a better overall defensive group. We just do. We gave them too many easy baskets. Some of it was because of their half-court execution. Some of it was because of blown assignments on our end. Some of it is just a bunch of younger guys out there, and we could almost not keep up with the speed of the ball and the speed of their movement. We're better now at that, and that has to show up on Thursday. We have to be harder to score against to beat them.
Evan Desai from PBS Arizona.
Yeah, Coach. So obviously you guys have all had some time to reflect on that those two games against ASU. And so obviously there was some buzz this offseason about ASU's team being on the come up, and you guys got that sweep. So what do you think that this chapter of the rivalry proved to you, and how do you see the state of the rivalry right now?
Well, I mean, we're thrilled to beat them. And, number one, they're in the Pac-12. So winning a conference game home and away is not an easy task for any of us. But, I recognize, and we all do, that, each program seems to have their natural rival. If you're at UCLA or USC, you have each other. That game has a lot more meaning sometimes because of the fan bases, and they share a city. In our case, we share the state, and so we know it means a lot. So we play that game with a lot of pride, and I know they do too. In fairness to ASU, they've been hit a lot like Stanford with a lot of injuries and a lot of off-the-court COVID situations. And, when you don't have your team together regularly, it hurts. It hurts the development of a group. So I do believe that when their entire team is together, that they could put it together down the stretch. But we feel good that we beat a very good team, a talented group. And, but, it's like so much about where you go from here. It's feel good about it. And then, Ben has an injury and now you're worried about the next game, the next two games. So we really have to just stick with our task at hand, making sure that we move from one thing to the next. No different than when we dropped our homestand against SC and UCLA. That was tough back-to-back losses, but how you handle it means a lot. And our group did a good job of bouncing back, learning from that experience, and maybe improving. So we have to do the same thing coming out of these last two games, where maybe we have a renewed sense of confidence, and that confidence can help us on Thursday.
David Kelly, back to you.
Hey, Sean, two-part question. The way that game at ASU ended with the play with James and Azuolas was oddly reminiscent of the 1983 national championship game where North Carolina State beat Houston. And just curious, one, as a young teen, what you remember about that game, if you had a rooting interest that night. I know a lot of us wanted Phi Slamma Jamma to win that game and we're disappointed. And then having coached at North Carolina State, did you ever come across and have any interactions with Lorenzo Charles or Derek Wittenberg, any of those guys?
Sure. I mean, you get to know all the players, former players. You're probably aware Lorenzo passed away, unfortunately. But just a crazy story when I'm going to go back about 9 or 10 years ago when we had Derek Williams, might have been 11 years ago. We played at NC State. And, we flew all the way across the country, and obviously it's a big Pac-12 versus ACC game. And I remember being on the bus, and we were talking about what you just talked about, Jim Valvano, and, I know Chris Corciani very well, and what it was like to be an assistant coach back then in the ACC. And Tim Duncan was there when I was there, and Dean Smith was coaching in North Carolina. So I was going through all of that. And I looked right in front of me, and our bus driver was Lorenzo Charles. I can't make it up. He was driving the bus, and that's what he was doing for a living at the time. And then the next phase of that story is then when we got to the game, my brother, who obviously played at NC State and knows everybody there, he looked at me. He goes, "Look down behind the bench," and who was sitting right behind their bench, first seat? Lorenzo Charles. So it was just like, I was shaking my head. It was like the fact that he was our bus driver, and then we didn't realize it. And then we caught on, and then he's behind their bench. But but he passed away. I'd have to say the end result of that pass or game was a little bit bigger than the one that we had in Tempe the other day.
I guess you mentioned talking to Derek about that, and obviously a lot of the American kids have knowledge. Like I'd asked Azuolas, and I mean, I didn't expect him to really know anything about that play, but is it weird that maybe a lot of these international kids don't have that feel for the national championship history? And is it maybe in a sense easier because they're not going to have that opportunity, but they really don't know much about what that opportunity even is for them to kind of navigate through this season?
Yeah, one of the things about our team this year, we have a blend of obviously a number of different, cultural differences, international players, player like Ben from Montreal, Canada. And although it's a bordering country, the fluent language that's spoken to a large extent in Montreal is French, right? So Ben can speak fluent French, and you see him kind of interact with Daniel Bacho, who's actually from Paris, France. And what we may get lost in their know-how or their familiarity with March Madness or anything American basketball-wise, they also bring like a new ingredient to our locker room and to just our team, because they're able to talk about things that our guys have absolutely no idea about, so I would call it like an exchange and a give and take versus us constantly trying to familiarize them with what we do. I think they've done a good job of kind of bringing to life where they're from and how they see things. So, but I'm sure to some extent this year in particular, we have so many new faces that our guys are grateful to be here. They really are. They enjoy being here at Arizona. It's in some ways they almost don't know what they're missing with not playing in front of fans. And, I look forward to seeing them have that opportunity to play in front of people and have everything that they came here to accomplish really in front of them.
And quickly, did you have a rooting interest in that 83 game that night? I imagine you were probably in about 8th grade, maybe.
I probably was going for the underdog. So I would say I was probably an NC State man back then.
Bruce Pascoe.
Sean, I don't know if Stanford's going to have Davis or Wills back court, but they posted a possible lineup with Jaden Dallaire, I think, and Oscar Da Silva playing on the wing. Didn't know if that's what expect, and if they don't have those two guards, what expect with that big lineup that Stanford could throw at yet.
Yeah, I mean, Oscar Da Silva always goes back and forth. He plays the power forward, and they have a true center in with him. And then during the game, he slides over and, he becomes like a third forward, plays the center. But as you well know, he's the furthest thing from playing like a center. So he's done that. And again, that's what makes Stanford such a good team, because they have somebody on their team that can play both roles equally effective. And, if you have a smaller four-man, he's big enough, smart enough that he can score around the basket. And clearly he's a great driver and excellent three-point shooter. So he can really be hard to defend if you're playing him with a center, more of a true big guy. And in our case, we're going to try to guard him with different types of players, and hopefully we can keep him from having a big night.
Does it make it maybe more the case, like you mentioned, you could put Azuolas maybe a 3 if you get in a pinch with a huge lineup like Stanford may throw at you? Is that maybe more possible?
More possible for Azuolas to play the
3, yeah, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, we can't even worry about what Stanford's doing. We have to put our best foot forward on our end, be the smartest that we can be, and making sure that we don't get into foul trouble, and make sure that our guys can be rested, because, in some cases you can get through a single game and maybe not sub as much, but as you know, there's a drop off. You get towards that final 8 minutes of a college game where there's a lot of energy and effort. Although you have a player out there, he doesn't have that energy in the tank that he normally does. And, you don't finish the game strong. So obviously that's why depth is so important. I remember being here about 4 weeks ago, and all I talked about is the power of our roster, and that we had a group of 9, and that we really didn't have a big drop off from the bench to the starters. And it was exciting for us to build that way. Well, we went from 9 to 7 quickly, so things change. So that's all part of it. And we just have to be ready. We really do. We can't rely on our home crowd to get us through. We have to be able to be the smartest group, the best team that we can be, knowing that we have a tall order.
And specifically without Davis, I mean, that pace he puts in Wills, pretty good defensive player. I mean, if those guys don't play, compensate for that. And are they a different team in the sense?
You were breaking up. Did you mention, you were saying that with their guys being hurt, how are they different or the same?
Yeah, exactly. Especially without Davis and Wills. I understand there's some doubt that either one of those guys may still not be able to play.
Yeah, so I mean, the last time that we played them, keep in mind they had their full roster. Davis was their starting one. He actually got injured in that game, our game. Wills played some 1-2, but he was a big factor in them beating us. And obviously Zaire was very good player on that particular night. So, the only Stanford team that we've seen was the one that had their entire roster. So although we've watched them play against other teams, I think the one aspect that's really changed for them is Dallaire. He just is coming on. He's more productive as he has a bigger role, more minutes, a lot like Ben Mathurin for us, or Azuolas Tubelis. You could see them almost growing with their added opportunity. You see the same thing there with Dallaire. And I almost look at him as a starter. If they had their full team, they almost have a 6th starter now, in that he's become that good of a player, and he's a very good driver. Like you'd mentioned, I think he's every bit 6'8", 6'9". So he gives them an athletic forward with great size, but he's really emerged in the absence of some of those guys.
Thanks.
All right, Coach. Thank you.
Thank you.